Okay, so we're going to use the grey Panaline accent colour. I think it works really well on white. So, as always, I don't apply it with this great big brush that Tamiya give you. I like to decant it and then apply it with a smaller brush. I'm not a smother it all over wash type of person. I prefer to pin wash. So that's what we will do. So we'll start with that. We can always get more if we need it. So what we're going to do is wherever there is somewhere we'd want to see shadow, so anything that's a raised detail or a recess is going to get a dose of this. So we're going to start with the turret, and we've got some detail around the gun here which I really want to pick out. And then we've got all these little tie down points which we can just highlight, and it is subtle, but that's what we're looking for. Sometimes you have to go back and do like a second coat. That's fine. Around every little bit of detail. And just let it do its thing. Just blob it on, let it do its thing. And even though it won't necessarily be easily seen on the displayed model, it's worth taking the time to do the little details that are a little bit out of sight. You never know at what angle someone's going to look at it and spot something. Okay, so that is our turret done. And you start seeing little bits of detail pop out that you'd not really noticed before. I think that the green plastic hid quite a bit of the detail that ordinarily in a different colour plastic you would see popping out. Now we have a grill, and we may end up doing this in the black, but I want to see what it looks like in the grey. That might end up okay. Well, that's our grey panel liner down. We can put that to one side now, and you can see it makes quite a difference. It does make it pop out a little bit. What I now do black on the underside here, black panel liner. Same process. I'm going to use a thicker brush for this though, because it's going to be hidden behind the wheels and stuff, so it needs to be a little bit more pronounced. So the springs are definitely an area that needs to be done. And then all this lovely detail that's been put in around the suspension. And I'm being much more liberal here because I don't mind the colour variations on this. It can look like oil and all sorts of stuff. And we want to just get it into all these little angles. Very, very angled machine. So yeah, you can see just going to make everything pop out a little bit. So happy with that. So I'm going to carry on and get all of this done, and then we can move on from there. We're getting ever closer to the finish line on this one. Okay, we can put the last remaining tools on and finish the front end of this now, except for we've not got the glazing done yet, the lamps. So what we're going to do is get the tools on, then we're going to paint the wheels up, and then we've got it to sort of what I'd say is a sort of showroom condition finish. I'm not going to stop there, we're going to go beyond that, but let's get it to there first so you can get an impression of how that looks. So the shovel, let's get my tweezers. The shovel should go in there, I think. Yeah, like that. There we go, and that looks good. And then the pickaxe handle mounts into these here. Like so. And then these that we'd previously tacked on, we can now glue this in more permanently, as in we don't want them coming off again. There we go. So you can get an idea if you build option 2, which doesn't have these on, you get an idea of what that would look like. It actually looks quite busy and looks quite good, doesn't it? And now you can't see any of it. But actually, if you look from this angle, you can just about see the pickaxe handle. The pickaxe head, I should say. And you can see them through the side on. And of course we can see the shovel, so that's all good. So that's the last of the tools on. So the next thing is to paint the tyres. So let's look at that. So I'm going to use rubber black for this. I have played with this colour, but I don't remember how good it is. I like the Vallejo one because I think it's a really authentic rubbery colour. They get the green tint that rubber tyres have quite well. So I think we need a slightly bigger brush than we've been using, so bear with me. I'm going to use a number 4 for this job. There we go, it's just a matter of being careful. Right, do the centre of the tyre now. Just make sure I've got, sometimes easy to miss in the tread. So yeah, that looks okay. Take the tread now on the top of the tyre, and then we can work down to the centre of the back of the wheel. As you can see, it's drying really quickly. Okay, that is wheel number 1 done. So I'll carry on and get the rest done. Right, so our last 1 or 2 tasks to get this built up now. With the wheels being painted, I've got to say the ICM rubber black, really nice colour. I'm really happy with that. So they can now be assembled. We can put the hubs on the wheels. So I'm going to just put a little amount of glue on these rims. So this rim actually ends up going on the inside of these hubs. So you can see the outside ring just sits on there. So it's a nice easy fit. So that's those hubs on, and then this one, which looks a little bit different, is the spare wheel. So why they did the hubs different on the spare wheel, I don't know, but they did. So the spare wheel can now be glued straight into place. So I just want to take away a little bit of the material here just to make sure we get a good bond. So I'm just going to, it's had several coats of primer and paint and varnish, so we're just going to hack through it with a file. There we go, that'll do. So put a little bit of glue on there. There we go. That looks fantastic, doesn't it? So that's our spare wheel on. Okay, and then the next thing we can glue in place is this hatch, which goes on there like that. So my thought process is actually not to glue it to the hinge. Just move those out of the way for a sec. But to glue it at this point, because it seems to rest on the ledge there. So if we line the hinge up, it makes sense to naturally glue it to the hinge. I'm going to put a little bit of glue just under the hinge, and then we'll put some in this central spot here. There we go. So I'm not going to glue these wheels on just yet. You'll understand why in a moment, but we can just place them in. That one seems to be very loose. The others are a much tighter fit, and generally the front wheels have a slacker fit than the back wheels. Here's what I've just established. So just on our legs, and we can plop the turret in there. So the only thing outstanding, if you want to do a clean build of the Ferret, the only two things we've got outstanding is painting the aerial and adding the aerial and installing the lenses. So let's have a look at the lenses first of all. So what we're going to do is we're just going to, these are all the same part. They're all part one. So why we've got 8, I don't know. I guess there's going to be more lamps on other versions in the future. I'm sure there is some rational reason for it, but we only need 3 of them. So what I'm going to do, it's always handy to have some spare lenses in the stash of spares though. Just going to cut away the little sprue gate there on 3 of them, and then we're going to cut it out, the plastic, so we can still hold on to. I see I'm using my older ones. I don't use the good ones on the thick sprue, so get rid of those. Put that to one side. So what I want to do is just clean up the first edge. So that's a nice easy job. We're just going to get the nub off and clean that side up. I'm doing this without my magnifying glasses, so I'll probably finish it off camera when I can actually see what I'm doing. But they're out of reach and I've started filming, so. Okay, the next step is to colour in the sides. Right, whilst it's still attached to one sprue connection point, we'll sort that sprue connection point out in a minute. We're just going to colour the edges in. This helps with the light refraction, and it's just going to make sure, just colouring the edge in silver, just make sure that it all sort of keys in with what we've done. So the lens on the inside is silver, and I want that to look correct when we put it in. So sometimes this is, I'm hoping, is going to just fit nicely within the bezel. But what this is going to do is it's going to give you a slightly clearer lens look. It's a bit odd, but it does work. So we just need that to dry. Now, I've always done it this way, not always with pen, quite often with paint. And I generally do the edge the colour of the hole that it's going into. So if it's going into a hole that's got a rubber in, we'll do it black. If it's going into a hole that's painted red, I'll do the side red. And then when that's dry in a sec, we'll go around with some black, and what the black does is it just cancels out any light. So that way you've got something that as you look through the lens, and these are really thin, but on some lenses it's really thick. As you look through the lens, you're seeing the right colour that you should see, as if you were looking through the lens. And then you've got the black on the outside, which deadens the light in there and makes the lens look a bit more clear. So just a Sharpie, There we go. That's one. That's looking good. And then what we'll do is we will simply cut the part off the nib, clean that section up, and then just go over that little bit and touch it in with the 2 pens, just as we've done now. Now, you don't always see the difference until you actually place it in the part and you get the final sort of light passing through. But if we look at these here, you can see the difference. They look just a little bit more crystal clear at the bottom. I've got to say there's not a lot in it in this instance, but that's because these are really, really thin. When you get the thick chunky ones, especially on older kits, they can make a massive difference. And the same with any clear parts, windows, canopies, that sort of thing, generally a good way of working. So let's take the wheels off this, because that's just creating work for me. So I'm going to let those dry, and then we've got some canopy glue, and we can put those in. So the next thing is to just paint up the rubber on there, and I'm going to use the same rubber black that I've used for the tyres. Actually, I intended to do a different black, but we are going to make it look different because we'll put a little wash on it as well. So just need a small palette. I'm not going to need very much here. Okay, so that's the rubber painted in. Now you might be wondering why I've got walrus wheels on my desk. I've not gone mad. In this box is where I keep my bits of offcut of sprue that I use for stretching, for stretch sprue. And in fact, you can see I've got some already. And the question is that usable for my aerial, or have I got to make some more? So I'm just going to nip this end off and see if that takes this bend off. Can bin that bit now. See if I can straighten it. If I can straighten it, that's going to save me a job. There is no indication of how long the aerial needs to be, but it does have to go straight up in the air, so don't think that's going to help. So we'll make some. Now you'll see in here I've got lots of clear, and I've got some white, and I've got some red. That's because the clear ones are brilliant for doing things like icicles and that sort of stuff. But what's this I've got at the bottom here? Let's stretch some sprue. So I do it with a tea light, just because it gives me hands free, as I'm not having to hold something with a flame on it. Okay, so what you do is you basically hold this over the flame and wait for it to soften, at which point it bends and you can pull it or whatever. So I'm just going to hold it above the light. you can see it changes the nature. It goes to sort of matte, and you know that the heat is starting to take effect, which is now, and then pull it, and that gives us our aerial. Simple as that. So I'm going to cut it off here. And it almost came snapped into two, so I've got two aerials here basically. Lovely and thin, that. And the advantage of making it yourself rather than using copper wire or anything like that is it's plastic, and therefore you can use your plastic glue on it, and that's just easier, isn't it? So I'll leave that there for a sec. Right, and just want to understand height. So we're going to start by just trimming off some of this ugliness at the bottom. So the real thick bit. Trim that off and throw that away. See where that gets us. That's our aerial on, so all we've got to do now is paint that up. So the easiest way to do that will actually be with a white paint pen, I think. Yeah, that's on there good and strong. So that means I've got another aerial for another day. Now I know there are some units that have an aerial mounted at the front as well, which I think is what that little location hole is for, on future release no doubt. So that's our stretch sprue aerial done. Let's get it painted in. Right. White Posca pen. Sometimes you have to just press the nib in to get it to flow, and I think there we go, that's where we need to be. And I can see that's laying down paint now. Okay, I am happy with that, I think. Yeah, so that's our aerial done. So let's have a look at finishing these lenses now. So what we can do is nip off this gate. Gently sand away the nib. There we go. And then we can go in with our silver pen. Like so. We're putting so little on that it should be dry fairly quickly. So we can touch that in with our black. So that is our first lens done. I'll do the other two off camera because you don't need to see me do that 3 times. And then we'll look at gluing them in. Right, let's fix these lenses into place. So any canopy glue, GS Hypo I use quite a bit. I'm using Ultra Glue here. I'm not a massive fan of it for various reasons. I've talked about that in previous videos, but I've got it, so I want to use it up. So with that in mind, we're going to use that on this. So 3 lenses to install. I'm going to just put that in a better position so that we can get to the lenses better. Right, we are ready to rock and roll. So, well, to make sure that in my tweezers I've got the lamp in the right orientation, then we're going to put a little amount of glue on the edges. Now, like I said, the edges on this are really thin, so I have to put it on as much of the lens edge as I can, just to make sure we're going to get a good bond. So that's the first one. In place. Oh, that looks great. Try not to be too liberal with the glue, because actually, despite what it says on the bottle, it does not dry perfectly clear. Oh, we've got a little bit of glue showing from that one. I want to take that off straight away. That's us done, really. So let's just talk about the build so far. So that is my clean build done, other than I've just remembered that I've not put my gloss on my lamp lenses. The indicators and reversing lights and wing mirrors still need gloss. But other than that, it's done. So if you want to build it straight out of the box, which you've seen me do, and do it as a clean build, it looks pretty awesome. But if you want to go a little bit further, then we can do a little bit more. So that's what we're going to do next. But the actual build is finished now. So it's down to the individual modeler whether they want to weather it or not, and what clean looks like. For me, a clean build still has a little bit of shadow work on it. It's, you know, as it is. So let's talk about weathering for this. Now, these are fairly well maintained vehicles. They're not actually in a proper full-on combat situation as a post-war Cold War vehicle, and this particular one in Cyprus, it'll get dusty, yeah, sure, and then it'll get washed, and it'll get chips and bits and pieces, yeah, sure, but if it gets too bad, it'll get painted in. So what we're looking for is a little bit of light chipping on the tie-down points and maybe 1 or 2 hatch edges, and possibly on these anti-ditching plates. So, you know, we can do some little bits with that. And then the main thing is to get it a little bit dusty and make it look like it's been driving around in a hot day in Crete. So that's my aim with the weathering, not to go over loads of rust and all that sort of stuff, because it simply wouldn't be accurate. It's a well-maintained vehicle. It needs to look like that. So let's have a look at what we can do to try and give it a slightly more used feel while keeping it well maintained. Right, carrying on with the build, my next task is to do the gloss work. So We've got lamps at the rear and at the front, and the wing mirrors that all need a gloss coat. I'm using Vallejo's acrylic varnish. It's a nice, easy product to work with. This is straight from the bottle, not thinned. And it depends on how glossy you want things, but usually I go with 2 coats to get a really nice shine. It goes on a little bit white to start with, but don't worry about that. When it dries, it clears. Okay. And now we're going to just go into that rear view mirror. You have to be careful not to pull it too much, because it's going to just all run to the bottom. Okay, the other thing we can do whilst we've got the gloss varnish out is we can do the visible vision blocks, just to remove any matteness from them. Now there is one underneath this hatch, and if we can get to it, I definitely want to do it. If we can't, it's not a biggie. I think we should be able to. Yeah, there we go. Just when it catches the light, it's just going to have a bit of a glint, and that's going to look great. And we've got a visible viewing block around the back here. There we go. Now we should be able to go around and do second coats all the way around. Dries fairly quickly, this stuff. Right, I'll finish up and then I'll come back to you when we're ready for the next stage. Right, let's tackle the exhaust. So, engines, in the 60s and the 70s, they were not very environmentally friendly. So we expect them to be very heavy polluting. And I remember cars when I was a kid, and the tailpipes were always very black, because this is a time before in the UK we had unleaded petrol and all of that sort of thing. So I'm going to start by just going into the exhaust itself and blackening that up. And it's just a little bit of dust from my black pastel chalk. Then we're going to rub it in around the end there. So that makes the end of the exhaust nice and black, but we want to get some of it around the exhaust as well. So just get some more on the brush, and we're just going to rub that in. Doesn't matter if we get a bit on the corner there, that's just adding to the effect. And we mustn't forget the underneath. That's all we need. Right, so these are my weathering pastels for the next few jobs, and I have two brushes here. This one is for doing light dusting, and this one, this stubby one, is for grinding muck in. Now it can be quite a mucky job, so I've just been handling these. And what I need to do now I've got them on there, which is where I'm going to use them, is I need to wash my hands because I don't want to get any of this in unintentional places. So the other thing that we need for our weathering, other than these pastels, is pencil. So we're going to do some scratches and bits and pieces using the pencil. And what I'm really looking for is just make some marks on some of the areas where things might get tied and people are going to wear it as from accessing it and being on it. So I don't want it overly weathered. I don't want it, like I say, these are fairly well maintained machines, but I do want to be able to see that they're being used. So it's the old rule of less is more, but it can be really difficult because, especially when it's looking good, you can get a little bit overexcited. So the thing to do is just think about where people are interacting, where there's likely to be arms resting, legs resting, feet rubbing, that sort of stuff. And what does that mean? Just some light scratching, maybe a little bit on the handle. On the vision block and so on. I can imagine quite a bit of scratching on this edge. Well, our build is done, and I'm at that point where I can reflect on what we got in the box and what we've ended up with. So this is a straight out of the box build. I have done a little bit of modification, but it's really, really minor. When I did the first impressions of this, I thought it was, you could tell it was a nice kit, but it didn't quite blow my socks off. Now I've built it, I would say that actually the kit builds up into something better than it looks like when you first look at it in the box, and that's because the end result is really, really nice. So let's just think about the whole thing. It builds up easily. It's not overly complicated. It's a skill level 2. So if you've got a couple of kits under your belt, this isn't going to be a challenge for you at all. So it does build up really very nicely. It fits together really, really well. I've had no issue with fit, with one exception, which is the openings that you can have open. So these two here and these two at the back, because of how the hinge is molded, if you don't have much to mount it on if you're going to have them open. You're really gluing the top edge onto the side of the vehicle. So there isn't an option to have a properly extended hinge. It's in its closed position, which is, when you've got a different internal surface, they could have given you that option. So that's the only thing that I had a little bit of messing around with fit, and I think that one's been put on 3 times. So otherwise, everything goes together really, really well. There's been no messing around, no cleanup of parts beyond sprue nubs and a little bit of seam here and there, and that wasn't in it by any stretch of the imagination excessive. And indeed, a lot of the parts sort of held themselves in place. In terms of filling, a little bit here and there, but really, really minor stuff. Realistically, it's not given us any particular issues. The main filling job was the inside of the turret ring, where the 2 parts have a curve, and so you've got quite a big V-shaped sort of gap in there which you need to take out. So yeah, when it comes to the molded parts, there's nice detail where it matters, which is all these lovely exteriors. The radio, which when you look through, you can see quite clearly. I can see the radio face there. So having done some detail painting really makes that pop out. So that's great. So the detail, I think, is really nice. The interior is a bit sparse. They could have done more with that, but of course that would have upped the price. So Airfix often take the view that you don't need that for this model and to hit the price point we want. And anyone who's that interested in doing the interior is either going to scratch build it and have a lot of fun doing that, or they're going to get an upgrade set at some point and plop that in. So they also haven't included an engine, but a nice touch is they have included the inside surfaces of the engine doors. So if you do get an engine, you'll be able to plop it open. You don't need replacement doors because that bit's already done. Now there is a small error on here, and that is with these plates on the front. So these anti-ditching plates, what they've done is they've looked at it and thought, right, there should be 2 of those, and if we put them lined on top of each other, it's just going to look like a thick bit of plastic. So they've offset the top one, which is brilliant. It makes it look like two thinner pieces of metal, and it looks really authentic. The problem is they have done the same on the other side. So both sides are shorter on the top. So if it's going to be shorter on the top there, these would be the same length. It should be shorter on the bottom there. It's a minor detail, and at some point there will be photo etch replacements and you'll be able to do something different with that if you want. I think it was a really nice idea, just a minor little observation there. But as you can see, painted up, they look really, really nice. So yeah, for me, it's built up lovely. You've got some nice options in there. They've given you 2 options of these bins. They've given you 3 really different and eye-catching paint schemes. The decals, the cartograph, they're brilliant. They went down without any issues. The biggest issue I had was putting one of them on upside down, but I spotted it before it was too late. So yeah, it builds up well and it looks really well. The build sequence in the instructions largely makes sense. The only thing I really deviated from was I built the turret at the same time as I built the interior, so I could paint internal colours all at the same time, and I put the wheels on at the very last thing that we did pretty much was put the wheels on, and then we put the lamps on because we want to be able to paint in there and weather. So that's the only thing with the instructions. The instructions were clear, easy to follow, made sense, and for even a fairly novice modeler, this won't pose a problem at all. I think this is a cracking model, and I think that Airfix are going to get many years of use out of this. There's all sorts of versions, loads and loads and loads of different paint scheme options. So yeah, I think it's a cracking kit, and for the price, why wouldn't you have a go at doing one of these? Now, just a point on the paint scheme. When you look at reference material for the Cypress ones, you struggle to find any reference pictures with this green bottom and wheelbase. But apparently that is correct. That's how it was in the early days in Cypress, and then later on they were white all over. So don't think this is an error on Airfix's part. But yeah, there you have it. I think it's a cracking looking model. I've really enjoyed building it. It's taken me 2.5 weeks using my usual sort of modeling time. I couldn't calculate how many hours that is. It takes longer than you think, not because it's complicated, just because of the intricacies of some of the detail painting. And there's nice little touches like the decal on the fire extinguisher really adds to it. There's loads and loads of nice little options for dioramas, for figures, and I'm sure we're going to see loads of these at the model shows over the next few years. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed building it, and I hope you did. I'm going to take some photos of it now and play you out. In the meantime, you enjoy your modelling. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, then you can hit super thanks. Please like, subscribe and share with your friends. Bye for now.